You all right?
Yeah, I'm good. Speed's good, boys. Keep it coming.
We're breaking through. See some light. I'm in some kind of a chamber. Is tile working?
Just dropping by to let you know we still have no idea what's going on, and most of us are just making it up as we go. So, good luck with all that and stuff. Okay, bye.
Press. Thank you, press. Thank you, press. Thank you, press. Thank you, press. Let's go. Thank you, press. Thank you, press. Thank you, press. Let's go. Come on, guys. Come on, guys. Let's go. Let's go.
Ultimately, we cannot defeat nature. We can only accept its dominion over us. One day it will inevitably defeat us all.
What the fuck was that? I heard some shit out here.
You've lost friends too. You could be next. They give us half a life and think we won't fight for it.
Like a tunnel that you follow, a tunnel of its own, down a hollow to a cavern where the sun has never shone. Like a door that keeps revolving. I'm sorry.
Do you know if I'm happy up there?
An interview of Larry Silverstein was released in 2002 of him saying we decided to pull Building 7. This isn't a theory, this isn't just word of mouth or speculation, this is an actual video of Larry, the owner of the World Trade Centers, saying that firefighters decided to pull Building 7.
I remember getting a call from the fire department commander telling me that they were not sure they were going to be able to contain the fire. And I said, you know, we've had such terrible loss of life. Maybe the smartest thing to do is pull it. And they made that decision to pull, and then we watched the building collapse.
Now, the word pull in demolition terminology means to set off the explosions that will bring the building down. If this was the case with Building 7, then how was the building fitted with explosives and brought down, in an operation that takes weeks, if not months, just a few hours after the Twin Towers were hit? Surely everyone would be more focused on helping victims than thinking about bringing down Building 7. Now, the official 9/11 Commission states that Building 7 was damaged from falling debris and came down due to fire weakening just one column. If this is true, then what is Larry talking about?
I said, you know, we've had such terrible loss of life. Maybe the smartest thing to do is pull it. And they made that decision to pull, and then we watched the building collapse.
If this were really happening, what would you think?
Perhaps you wouldn't be that surprised. How on earth can you justify this?
The first few days after 9/11, Myers, NORAD, and others were saying, we didn't send up any flights until after the Pentagon was hit. Well, that wasn't going to wash. That looks like a stand down where you say, well, just let it happen. So then they start telling us, and CBS says on Tuesday night, oh no, they sent up flights, but they just didn't get there on time. And that became official then on September 18th. They came out with their timeline. They said, here's when the FAA told us, and here's when we scrambled airplanes, and unfortunately they just couldn't get there in time. Now, then in the meantime, critics have looked at those timelines and said, you still could have made it. You could have stopped Flight 175. You certainly could have stopped Flight 77, assuming it was. And so we've got a third story here. They give us a new timeline which says we had 9 minutes notice for Flight 11, and that wasn't enough because it took 8 minutes for NEADS, NORAD in Northeast, to call Florida to get permission to send up planes, which is, ridiculous. An 8-minute phone call when you've got a crisis. And then no warning whatsoever. So they tell you that what we've been told since September 18th is all false. When September 18th, NORAD's timeline said we got a notification of Flight 175 at 8:43, the 9/11 Commission says, no, that was a mistake. They didn't know about it until the South Tower was hit. And then Flight 77, they said, well, we got notification at 9:24. No notification. We only heard about it 2 minutes ahead of time, just in time to send up a guy and look at it and say, yeah, that's a Boeing 757, all right, just before it crashed. And then with Flight 93, no warning whatsoever. So just a complete rewriting of history. And revisionism is fine, but you've got to show why the old story was false and why the new story is more credible. They don't do that. They just say, that was incorrect. That was incorrect. Here's the truth, and then you look at the notes. It looks very scholarly because they've got all these books and the notes in the back, but you look at the crucial ones and it says, interview with General Myers, interview with General Everhart, interview with the Secret Service, interview with the FBI agents. I hate to tell you this, but this is the sad story of truth and politics in Washington in these here days. Thank you very much.
Well, if the plane didn't hit the Pentagon, where did it go? If the plane that hit the South Tower wasn't Flight 175, then where did it go? Where are those people? Well, we can't answer that question, and if we were attempting to do so, we would be engaging in conspiracy theory. However, consider the following scenario. Let's say that you have to put a loved one on a bus bound from New York to Boston. You put them on a Greyhound bus, and off it goes. A couple hours later, there's a news report that claims that the Greyhound bus bound from New York to Boston skidded out of control, crashed, and exploded. A couple weeks later, someone who happened to be sightseeing with a camcorder shows up with a videotape of the event. And upon examining that video footage, we see that this bus says Trailways on the side. Question: where did the Greyhound bus go? Well, if your loved one was on that Greyhound bus, you'd want to know, wouldn't you? The next question is, should we ridicule and demonize anyone who dares ask, where's the Greyhound bus? Should we likewise ridicule and demonize the person who took the video? Should we negate and ignore the video footage of the Trailways bus simply because we don't know where the Greyhound bus went? Well, that's exactly where we are in regard to the video footage that you've seen. We may never find out what happened to Flight 77 or Flight 175, but the video and photographic evidence screams that we need a new investigation.
What they don't tell you, and they give you the names, and in the middle of the book you can see their pictures. What they don't tell you is that at least six of those men are still alive. Some of them have, like Walid al-Shura, walked into the embassy and said, here I am, I'm not dead. Nevertheless, and some of them were interviewed by the BBC and London newspapers. And nevertheless, they're in there. And this Walid al-Shura, they have him on Flight 11, and they say, we believe he's one of the ones who stabbed some of the people who were stabbed. Just a total disregard of well-known facts. Just omit that there's any problem with the identity of the hijackers. Likewise, they failed to mention, Daniel Hopsicker has written a whole book about Muhammad Atta, shown he was not a devout Muslim. You know, the image we have, here are these radical fundamentalist Muslims. They're ready to meet their maker. Atta loved alcohol, pork, and prostitutes. And the commission says, we're puzzled. Why did these guys go to Las Vegas? We've not found any credible reason. Well, they loved lap dances, you know. Another hijacker, alleged hijacker, is Hani Hanjour. And they tell us he was chosen to fly Flight 77, the one that was going to hit the Pentagon, because he was their best pilot. Hani Hanjour could not fly any kind of airplane. He would go up in his lessons, and the next time the guy wouldn't go up with him. He says, you can't fly. He was known as a horrible pilot, even with a little plane. And yet he was alleged to fly this Boeing 757 and make this amazing spiral, come down and come in at ground level, 400 miles an hour into the Pentagon. You know, the best pilots in the world, some of them have looked at that and said, I don't think I could do that. Hani Hanjour could not fly. This one they do mention. It's a funny thing. They mention this and then they just ignore it. And they have President Bush amazed, you know, boy, this was just some pilot, you know.
Many of the 4 hijackers had actually flown a jet at least once before in their life. 3 of them, only 1, none of them. The answer is none of them. Not only Hanjour, but also the 3 other hijackers had never flown a jet before in their life. And yet, they performed such acrobatic maneuvers and hair-raising dives that the flight controllers on the ground believed that they were looking at military jets.
But nobody knew that was a commercial flight at the time. Nobody knew that was American 77.
What did you think? It was a military flight of some kind?
I thought it was a military flight.
It was really moving fast.
It was moving very fast, like a military aircraft might move at a low altitude.
Air traffic controller Danielle O'Brien stated, the speed, the maneuverability, the way that he turned, we all thought in the radar room, all of us experienced air traffic controllers, that was a military plane. You don't fly a 757 in that manner. It's unsafe.
It is unsafe, but if you're lucky, you need no training at all. Just close your eyes, grab the controls, and suddenly it's as if you've been flying planes for 30 years.
According to standard operating procedure, if an FAA flight controller notices anything that suggests a possible hijacking, the controller is to contact a superior. If the problem cannot be fixed within about a minute, the superior is to ask NORAD, the North American Aerospace Command, to send up or scramble jet fighters to find out what is going on. NORAD then issues the scramble order to the nearest Air Force base with fighters on alert. But although interceptions usually occur within 10 or so minutes, in this case, 80 or so minutes had elapsed before fighters were even airborne.
It's a mind-bending anomaly. Not a single U.S. Air Force interceptor turns a wheel until it's too late. There are no jets at all.
What if they were so confused and had been so deliberately confused that they couldn't respond?
The reason that they didn't know where to go was because a number of conflicting and overlapping war game exercises were taking place. It involved the insertion of false radar blips onto radar screens in the Northeast Air Defense Sector.
Center Team U, we have a problem here. We have a hijacked aircraft headed towards New York. We need someone to scramble some F-16s or something up there to help us out.
Is this real world or exercise? Is this real world or exercise?
There was another exercise, Vigilant Warrior, which was in fact, according to a NORAD source, a live fly hijack drill being conducted at the same time. With only 8 available fighter aircraft, and they have to be dispatched in pairs, they were dealing with as many as 22 possible hijacks on the day of 9/11, and they couldn't separate the war game exercises from the actual hijacks.
The Bush administration allowed thousands of its own citizens to be killed on 9/11, deliberately and cold-bloodedly, for the sake of advancing its imperial interests, and then used this event as an excuse to kill hundreds of thousands of people in other lands, while hypocritically portraying itself as promoting a culture of life. Of course, those who accept the previous interpretation know that hypocrisy with regard to the sanctity of life has long been a feature of official U.S. rhetoric. And yet most Americans, if they learned that their government had deliberately let their own citizens be killed, would surely consider this betrayal qualitatively different. For this would be treason, a betrayal of the oath taken by American political leaders to protect their own citizens. If this third view implies that the Bush administration is guilty of a heinous and even treasonous crime, this is all the more the case with the fourth view. For many Americans, the idea that we are living in a country whose own leaders planned and carried out the attacks of 9/11 is simply too horrible to entertain. Unfortunately, however, there is considerable evidence for this view. And if we find this evidence convincing, the implications for resistance to the U.S. empire building project are radical. As Bezovich has emphasized, the only remaining debate about the American empire is whether it is benign. The interpretation of 9/11 is relevant to this debate because it would be very difficult to accept either the third or the fourth interpretation and still consider American imperialism benign. So I now turn to some of the evidence that supports these views. I will look first at evidence that supports at least the third view, according to which U.S. officials had foreknowledge of the attacks. A central aspect of the official story about 9/11 is that the attacks were planned entirely by Al-Qaeda, with no one else knowing the plans. A year after the attacks, FBI Director Robert Mueller said, "To this day, we have found no one in the United States except the actual hijackers."
What do you think is the best response to the phrase conspiracy theory?
Well, the quickest one is that the government's theory was the original conspiracy theory about 9/11. And it's very interesting that both President Bush and Philip Zelikow used the identical words, telling people,
"Let us never tolerate outrageous conspiracy theories concerning the attacks of September the 11th.
But it's interesting to think about, what would be an outrageous conspiracy theory. It can't just be any conspiracy theory, since the government's theory is a conspiracy theory, according to which 19 Arab Muslims under the inspiration of Osama bin Laden conspired to do all these things. So what's an outrageous one? Well, if you think about these things in terms of the philosophy of science, you have good theories and bad theories. There's nothing wrong with a theory, quantum theory is considered rather respectable, and yet it's a theory. So, and there's nothing wrong with conspiracy theories. We all believe hundreds of conspiracy theories. Every day you read the newspaper, read about, it's just when 2 or 3 people conspire in secret to do something immoral or illegal, that's a conspiracy. And so our newspapers are full of those, from robbing the local 7-Eleven to Enron conspiring to cheat its investors. So there must be something that makes something an outrageous conspiracy theory. Well, in philosophy of science, a good theory is one that can take account of all the relevant facts in a self-consistent way. A bad theory is one that is inconsistent with some of the relevant facts. An outrageous theory would be one that is inconsistent with all the relevant facts, and that's the official theory about 9/11.
So what did happen on 9/11? The truth is, there was a lot more going on that day than we were being told. There were several war games and exercises being run simultaneously, involving multiple government agencies. John Fulton and a team from the CIA would be conducting a drill at 8:45 a.m. out of the National Reconnaissance Office in Chantilly, Virginia, in which a plane is crashed into a building. Other drills would literally cripple our defensive and investigative abilities on that morning.
But this very interesting information, Katie, Matt, and Tom, from the FBI, they had been operating a massive exercise from their hostage rescue unit. All of their top teams, about 50 personnel, helicopters, equipment, were in Monterey, California for the last 2 days, scheduled to fly back today commercially. So all of those people are out of place. It's fair to say, according to sources that we've talked to here at NBC, that the FBI rescue operations and other FBI operations are really in chaos right now because they can't reach their officials in New York. All of their phone lines are down, and now you've got all of their special experts on this stuck in Monterey, California, trying to get a military flight back because there are no longer commercial flights. So they are seriously out of pocket, and there is a real breakdown of the FBI anti-terror coordination team, which is, of course, the principal team that would lead any effort.
I actually found myself in Montana with 50 state emergency managers, the director of FEMA, his top staff at the National Emergency Management Association conference. Number of emergency managers from New York State, from Pennsylvania, from Virginia, Maryland, the district, most in New England, made the flight on a C-130 last night. It was one of the only flights across the country, a military aircraft.
Northern Vigilance would redirect fighter jets out of the northeastern sector to patrol Canada and Alaska. Vigilant Guardian and Vigilant Warrior were exercises involving hijacked aircraft that would go in and out of radar. These would appear real to those involved.
We fought many phantoms that day. We got many aircraft calls inbound that morning that turned out to be phantoms.
During that time frame, we had multiple aircraft called hijacked all over the country.
These exercises would not cease until after United 93 was brought down and the attacks were over.
Open line.
Surveillance, Sergeant Richmond.
Sergeant Richmond, Sergeant Light from Cheyenne Mountain Test Control. How are you?
I'm doing fine.
Okay, I need you to terminate all exercise inputs coming to Cheyenne Mountain at this time.
Copy.
And stay on loop until I verify that or the connectivity is disconnected on the exercise side only. Okay, no, do not do any more inputs on the exercise side and stand by.
I got Cheyenne Mountain on the line. Terminating all exercise inputs.
So, Grover, in case you didn't know, this exercise.
Oh, yes.
Mark, if what you say is true, those could be cargo planes or something like that. You said you didn't see any windows in the side?
I didn't see any windows in the sides. I saw the plane flying low. I was probably like a block away from the subway in Brooklyn, and that plane came down very low. And again, it was not a normal flight that I've ever seen at an airport. It was a plane that had a blue logo on the front, and it did not look like it belonged in this area.
Now, we've just heard testimony that refutes the official report that a commercial airliner hit the World Trade Center. Well, if it wasn't a commercial airliner, it would have to be either a private or a military aircraft, and I think we can rule out private aircraft. Now, if this was a military plane, that would explain the possibility that there was something mounted on the belly of the plane. Now, Phil Jahan, webmaster of the website letsroll911.org, and many other people have postulated that this indeed was a pod of some sort mounted to the belly of the plane. Many of our listeners are ex-military and have agreed that this is a distinct possibility. When you couple this with the mysterious flash that occurs on the side of the World Trade Center just as the plane makes contact, I think we can probably agree that there was some sort of an incendiary or an explosive that would serve as a match to ignite the enormous amount of fuel that would be dispersed as soon as the plane hit the building. Let's take another look at this one clip, and you'll notice that the flash is a separate event than the contact of the fuselage as it hits the building. Some folks have stated that the flash was a result of the fuselage making contact with the Trade Center building. But as you can see, the flash is indeed to the right of the fuselage, and in fact, as the fuselage makes contact with the World Trade Tower, you can see a reflection of the flash in the fuselage, which further supports the contention that these are two separate events.
The 9/11 attacks came as a surprise to the Bush administration. Nothing is more essential to the official story than this idea. About 10 months after 9/11, FBI Director Robert Mueller said, "To this day, we have found no one in the United States except the actual hijackers who knew of the plot." There is much evidence, however, that counts against this claim. One type of evidence involves an extraordinarily high volume of put options purchased in the 3 days prior to 9/11. To buy put options for a particular company is to bet that its stock price will go down. These extraordinary purchases included two and only two airlines, United and American, the two airlines used in the attacks. They also included Morgan Stanley Dean Witter, which occupied 22 stories of the World Trade Center. The price of these shares did, of course, plummet after 9/11, resulting in enormous profits for the purchasers. These unusual purchases, as the San Francisco Chronicle said, raised suspicions that the investors had advance knowledge of the strikes. It would appear, in other words, that those who made the purchases knew that United and American airliners were going to be used in attacks on the World Trade Center. The 9/11 Commission tried to show these suspicions to be unfounded. It claimed, for example, that the purchases for United Airlines do not show anyone other than Al-Qaeda had foreknowledge because 95% of these options were purchased by a single U.S.-based institutional investor with no conceivable ties to Al-Qaeda. But the Commission thereby simply begged the question at issue, which is whether some organization other than Al-Qaeda was involved in the planning. Also, the Commission ignored the other crucial point, which is that U.S. intelligence agency closely monitored the stock market, looking for any anomalies that might provide clues to untoward events. Therefore, regardless of who orchestrated the attacks, the U.S. government would have had intelligence suggesting that United and American airliners were to be used for attacks on the World Trade Center in the near future.
We put together a playbook for how to deal with the eventuality of a pandemic. Because scientists had been saying with globalization and travel, etc., rising populations, that at some point there was going to be a pandemic. And so I said to my team, I said, we got to have a plan, just like you do for hurricanes or tornadoes or natural disasters. So we put together this whole playbook. And we practiced the playbook. We get all the agencies. This is how we're going to respond. This is how to make sure that the public health systems in all the states are working. Here's how we're going to think about the schools. And when Donald Trump came in, we gave over this playbook to them. And but the point is,
for the international order that we have worked for generations to build. Ordinary men and women are too small-minded to govern their own affairs. The order and progress can only come when individuals surrender their rights to an all-powerful sovereign.
North. We are facing north. Just confirming that is you guys that's in the broken window that faces the Luxor. We are facing the Luxor. We do not have a broken window. Okay, copy. It looks like you might have another room that has a broken window that also faces the Luxor off that north end.
Oh yeah, what the? What is that?
209 Control. Control 224.
Is that a zip line? Is that a zip line? It's a person, isn't it?
It kind of looks like a person daily, but also a button.
It's a person, isn't it?
It kind of looks like a person daily, but also a button.
I have no idea.
Oh, there it is. Oh, there it is. Oh, there it is.
I've always thought, looking at that very, very famous footage of him bending over and whispering into the ear of President Bush in that Florida classroom, I've always thought that what he said was, "Everything's going according to plan, sir." It's the only thing that makes sense looking at his face, at Bush's face. How do you account for the fact that there are so many holes in the official story? Surely they would have planned the cover story while planning the attack. Do they want us to uncover the truth for some other reason?
That's a good question, and I devoted quite a bit of space to it in the new Pearl Harbor, because I point out there are so many things that are just so obviously problematic. But one answer is that, when you look at the war in Iraq, these guys are not geniuses.
Is anything known about the placement of explosives in the World Trade Center buildings and their ignition?
Both Jim Hoffman, whom I believe is here, and Stephen Jones, physicist at BYU, who's, I think there was film with him in it, and he has written a lecture which has gotten a lot of circulation called "Why Indeed Did the World Trade Center Buildings Collapse?" Both Hoffman and Jones have discussed this issue. There are plausible scenarios, not very difficult actually to figure out, as to where the explosives would have to be placed in order to slice, all the 47 chord columns. And evidently it wouldn't take an enormous number of explosives. Jones at least suggests it would take quite a bit fewer than I had originally thought, so that it wouldn't literally take thousands of hours to plant all these.
You ever wonder why an airplane has to be a certain size? Because somebody has to get inside it, right?
Right.
What happens if you don't need a pilot?
What happens if you just have remote control planes that carry deadly weapons? You saw it back there at the store. There were toy tanks, toy planes. Can you imagine what it'd be like if we perfected a toy-sized plane that had deadly fighting capabilities? Little remote control planes. Yes! You saw those kids back there at the arcade. Those kids have better hand-eye coordination than any pilot you'll ever see. Little children can fly remote control planes.
Patrick, it's only the weaponry that's missing.
Can you imagine the savings if we reduced the cost of planes, say, $450 million apiece, down to $5,000? That's what I'm talking about. The military today, Pat, costs too much. I'm talking about a cheap military, an inexpensive military for the future. You can't eliminate the military, so you have to have a military you can afford. Little tanks, little planes, little helicopters. Toy-sized military with deadly fighting weapons. You give me $500 million, the cost of one stealth bomber, I'll give you 1 million toy-sized planes. And I guarantee you one thing, Pat, no one's gonna spot them on the radar screens.
Why do I feel so guilty for doing something that has no meaning?
What the voices tell people all the time, and it's very discouraging. There's no voices that are sent to people that are complimenting the person. They're absolutely pounding them, trying to affect their emotions and causing detrimental things to their body and psychosis. But yeah, there's many ways to do these things too, and I believe they're working on at least 4 different methods to attack anyone they want. The whole purpose of these weapons, they don't want to have to arrest you, go to trial, and all this process, and it takes a long time, or they don't want to go to your house and shoot you, because then there's evidence and it ends up in the evening newspaper. They want a secret, silent way to remove people from civilization by just pushing a button and they go insane within a few weeks. That's what the goal of all this technology is.
There was a woman I was in contact with before I think she committed suicide because she couldn't take it anymore. I can say her name now because she's passed. Her name was Carol Sterling. And she ran afoul of some kind of government types. I forgot the circumstances. She didn't want to go along with some kind of business deal where she would have been ripped off, whatever the case may be. And then one of the businessmen, so-called, that she was dealing with said something to the effect of, well, if you won't go along with this, we've got that thing in Alaska that'll take care of you, or words to that effect. But he did mention Alaska. And thereafter, she started getting electronically harassed to the point where all of the muscles in her body would ache. She would get tremendous headaches, migraines. It felt like her body was on fire. She would go to the doctor. Of course, they would never find anything. They would never diagnose anything. She would tell her family and friends they thought she was crazy, essentially. And so this harassment continued for some time. And then I eventually lost comms with her. I found out through the grapevine that she had died. She had been suggesting to me that just waking up in the morning was such a trial that she didn't want to go through with it anymore, and she hinted strongly at committing suicide. So I think that maybe there was something to do with that project or whatever in Alaska. Some people inferred maybe he was referring to HARP or some other program. At any rate, the interference was such that she may have committed suicide. And another person I knew, a very good friend of mine, he was a surfer in San Diego, and he was a property manager. And he used to frequent a bar in Tijuana. He didn't know it at the time. It was a CIA mercenary recruitment bar. And he was talking to some guy at the bar there, and they'd gotten to know each other. Before too long, the guy tried to proposition him into smuggling arms into the U.S., and he wouldn't go along with it because he's a sensible guy. Thereafter, he was afflicted with the voice-to-skull phenomenon. And he said, in his case, he would get 24/7 of this hardcore, patriotic mind control, lambasting him for not being a good American, lambasting him for not being a patriot. And this went on and on and on. Eventually, he broke mentally, and he was prescribed meds. And then it turned out later on the meds he was being prescribed were hypnotics that were making him more susceptible to suggestibility, essentially. So
right.
he was caught up in that cycle for years, and it all came about because he was going to this bar in Tijuana. He rejected a recruitment offer, and then bam, they hit him with all this stuff, voice to skull, and it drove him mad basically for a while.
I have a lot of the scientific documents where they invented this mind control.
I think I'm living in a simulation.
And all of a sudden we hear boom! I thought it was a generator that blew up on the basement. And I said to myself, oh my God, I think it's a generator. And I was going to verbalize it. When I finished saying that in my mind, I hear boom! Right on the top, pretty far away. So it was a difference between coming from the basement and coming from the top. And that's, everybody started screaming. And a person comes running into the office saying, explosion, explosion, explosion. What happened? And he said, the elevators. And when there were many explosions, and when I actually talk about those explosions, they said that, well, there were so many kitchens in the building, and they have probably those gas canisters. And I said, I don't believe that, because the building was a Class A building. There are very strict guidelines of what you can put in a kitchen. And I really doubt it was gas in the basement. So there was a lot of misconceptions of what happened on that day in terms of the explosions. But up to date, I haven't received an actual explanation about the different explosions that I heard on the upper floors and not all the way to the top.
You gotta get back from here. You know that. You gotta get back. All right. I know.
How could they have gotten into the building? Well, maybe under the guise of a fireproofing upgrade, which was going on the months and years prior to 9/11. And interestingly, some of those floors were the same floors hit by the plane. Could there have been nanothermite applied as a liquid under the guise of a fireproofing upgrade? Because we do have intumescent paints, which are applied as a liquid and that are fireproofing. So that's a possibility. Kevin Ryan at digwithin.net examined this and many other important research projects to help give us a clue about what really happened here. If you had access to the core, to the elevators, you'd have access to the core columns and beams throughout the core. But you'd have to saw through about 2 inches of gypsum board on every floor or so to access the core columns. So interesting. Let's see what the senior database administrator, Scott Forbes, found in the weeks before 9/11.
It was probably the week leading up to 9/11. Every morning I'd come in around 7 a.m. and the dust was incredible. It was filthy. It was like the cleaners weren't cleaning. Right where the windows were, there was a sill which enclosed radiators. I was sick to death of the dust which was appearing on the windowsills. It was dirty grey and very, very noticeable in that week leading up to 9/11.
That's very interesting because they also had an elevator modernization going on the 9 months prior to 9/11. Very interesting. The ACE elevator had this contract. They came out of nowhere to get this contract. Why would the Port Authority have given one of the largest, most sophisticated elevator modernization programs in the industry's history to a small maintenance company contractor with basically just one customer? Yeah, they got this contract from Otis Elevators. Go ahead, Rich.
CIA front, because that's how CIA operate?
Well, it needs to be investigated, absolutely. This was the largest elevator modernization in the world, documented in Elevator World, March of 2001. Was it the whole thing just a front? Would they have put all that money into something that they knew was going to be coming down? So, yeah, Ace Elevator, by the way, like Larry Silverstein, the owner of the World Trade Center, who had a meeting every morning up at the windows of the world, just happened to miss his meeting that morning due to a dermatology appointment.
Osama bin Laden, #1 on everybody's most wanted list in the world today, is saying that once again that he did not do it. Don't hold him responsible. He's not guilty. He, of course, is the man that has been fingered by just about everybody in the world. And now he's released a statement really underlining that he had nothing to do with it. So let's go through the statement. There's some interesting aspects to this. He said, after the recent attacks which the U.S. has witnessed, the U.S. government ventured to point fingers at me, accuse me of involvement. The U.S. government has consistently blamed me for being behind every occasion its enemies attack it, that is the United States. And it goes on. I would like to assure the world that I did not plan the recent attacks, which seems to have been planned by people for personal reasons. And as for me, I have been living in the Islamic Emirate of Afghanistan and following its leader's rules. The current leader does not allow me to exercise such operations. Well, Jack, we can all weigh that on the scale of credibility and come to our own conclusion.
At the 10-second mark, watch carefully as the aircraft wing crosses the building. Notice how the wing appears to pass behind the structure, when in reality it should remain in front. This is a clear layering error, a common artifact of computer-generated compositing. You'll also see a faint halo along the wing's edge and a mismatch in motion tracking between the plane and the building. These are strong indicators that this footage was digitally altered. While CGI of this kind was technically possible in 2001, the imperfections you see here, especially the depth error, are very typical of early 2000 compositing limitations. In short, this clip does not show authentic footage. Instead, it shows a computer-generated overlay placed onto real video of the skyline. I've pulled a sequence of frames from around the 10-second mark where the wing crosses the building. Looking closely, here are some key observations. The wing edge does not blend naturally with the building's edge. It looks like the video layers are mismatched, causing the wing to slip behind instead of overlapping properly. There's a sharp aliasing halo around the wing in some frames, which is a common artifact of compositing CGI onto real footage. The motion tracking seems slightly off. The building remains stable, but the wing shifts unnaturally in depth. These clues strongly suggest this is CGI'd on positing, not a real aircraft.
The third explosion, the whole lobby collapsed on us.
What was it like? What was it like?
Horrible.
It's like hell. You don't want to know.
The whole building just collapsed on us inside the lobby.
Was that a secondary explosion?
Yes, it was.
That was the planet, probably?
Yeah, definitely secondary explosion. But we was inside waiting to go upstairs, and on our way upstairs, the whole fucking thing blew. And we just collapsed on everybody inside the lobby.
Similar to the first tower coming down, secondary?
I don't know about the first one, but I know the second one was terrible. Then there was a third one too after that one.
Third explosion after that?
That's right. Everybody was inside the building, waiting to go upstairs, and they just let loose. Everything just let loose inside the building.
So what you told me is that there was the plane or whatever hit the building, then the secondary explosion.
It was like 3 explosions after that. We came in after the fire. We came when the fire was going on already. We was in the staging area inside the building, waiting to go upstairs. Then they exploded. The whole lobby collapsed on the lobby inside.
And it's just mayhem after that?
Just man, everybody tried to make their way out.
Just trying to help all the brothers get out.
A lot of people trapped inside.
I was sitting in the Brooklyn Navy Yard across from Brooklyn.
We watched the first explosion. As we're watching the building, we saw a black, very large airplane fly right into the second building. It came out of the south, right in front of our eyes. Just, it was so surreal, like a movie set.
Second and third explosions also, right?
We were in the building for the third one. It just collapsed. I was on this drive here for the other one.
People don't understand. There may be more. Any one of these fucking buildings could blow up. This ain't done yet.
This is on top of this. It couldn't be no worse than this. Couldn't be nothing no more worse than this. You're in the building trying to help people, and it's exploding on the inside the building. So I don't think it can get any worse than this.
It was an architectural defect. You know, the World Trade Center was always known as a very, very strong building. Don't forget, that took a big bomb in the basement. Now, the basement is the most vulnerable place because that's your foundation. And it withstood that. And I got to see that area about 3 or 4 days after it took place because one of my structural engineers actually took me for a tour because he did the building. And I said, I can't believe it. The building was standing solid and half of the columns were blown out. I mean, so this was an unbelievably powerful building.
If you know anything about structure, it was one of the first buildings that was built from the outside. The steel, the reason the World Trade Center had such narrow windows is that in between all the windows you had the steel on the outside. So you had the steel on the outside of the building. That's why when I first looked, and you had big, heavy I-beams, when I first looked at it, I couldn't believe it because there was a hole in the steel. And this is steel that was, you remember the width of the windows in the World Trade Center, folks. I think you know, if you were ever up there, they were quite narrow. And in between was this heavy steel.
We were up there on the roof up there, and a guy yelled out that they bombed New York City. And I was just watching the White House just to see anything, if it could happen, what's going to happen. And next thing you know, from out of nowhere, you just saw a plane real low and just went straight, didn't come in from high, came in real low, and just the back end of the Pentagon just blew it up, big mushroom fire cloud.
Just wondering where she is, that's all, and I'm trying to figure out how does a plane hit the Pentagon? You know what I'm saying? The Pentagon, that's the defense, you know what I'm saying? I mean, come on, I know it was a U.S. plane and all that, but I'm just saying, how do you let a plane, don't they have radar?
I don't know about nobody else, but I can tell you we know we was doing with 666. Hey, we exactly knew what it meant. We got people comfortable with his name, and we made sure we made songs violent. Very, very violent. Sometimes we used to try to come up with stuff to hypnotize people, like repeated of 666, back-to-back 666. Why got a bass line, you shaking your head, you high, Metallica and all that. That's what I brought in the group. The diversity of like, hey, why don't we just put some of this rock shit over a hard ass rap track. I even had the satanic books, the little warlock materials, you know, every warlock gotta have a dagger, cut the little point stars, whatever, little candles and shit. I had all that, I was into all that. So some folks were scared of it and left, put it like that. But me, I meant what I was saying. I definitely meant it. I said, so God, you're gonna play like that, huh? Well, I got you. I'm gonna make black folks comfortable with 666. Back then, black folks was like scared of this shit. You know, they wasn't too much on it. You know? Then they start listening to it and go to church. They say they Christians, but they bumping 666. You get what I'm saying? So my job was out of anger to make black people get comfortable with their name. And I was very intelligent with it because I read a lot about it. I read a lot and I put all that into the music and the energy. You get what I'm saying? Because how you get Satan's name going, you get the kids to liking it. Now today, see, I think we was one of the first people to break it like that. You would think 666 would have been a rock and roll band. So I think I was used by Satan, and I think he's a bitch.
That's why you hear rock stars sometimes say, I sold my soul to the devil. Because once you make that trade, he'll give you what you want. But people need to understand that the devil is not sharing his kingdom with anyone. He's selfish and hateful, and his personality is that of hate and violence.
Demonic or deliverance 101. I don't have time to do this teaching here. Say deliverance. He said, what is thy name? Very important. If you get if you get the name, you focus the power. Versus you just saying spirit, you could be talking about anything. But when you say you spirit of lust, you pinpoint the power straight at that spirit. So he said, what's your name? Because Christ knew he got a name that's above every name, that at the name of Jesus, every knee got to bow. So he said, what's your name? And he said, my name is Legion, for we are many. That's why I don't pay no, all this weird stuff people do, I know it ain't them. These people are full of the devil. Stop looking at these kids. These kids is full of demons. Your people and them, you are too. That's why you do what you do. People full of the devil. and don't know how to deal with the enemy, and they going to church and nobody's even dealing with it. This is not mind over matter. You can't teach out of spirit. You can't get enough knowledge to make a demon leave you alone. Only one thing works: a command spoken in faith in the name will get you free. Are you hearing what I'm saying? That's why I wouldn't be going to no church where they patty caking and not getting free. The devil is a lie. Either I want to know when the man of God say, come out, the thing gonna come out. I ain't got time to hear no church playing. It's real or it's not, because I'm not wrestling against flesh and blood. There's an invisible realm that Christ, when he walked up, that realm began to manifest in people. Them spirits start to cry out because they understood that this man has the ability to deal with us in where we are. First man that could do it. Say amen. And then he gave us his name to use, that we can do that also. Make sure you go to a church that understands their authority. Say amen. Are you there? I can be destroyed in the street. I sure ain't gonna go to church and get destroyed. Oh Lord, I gotta go. Look at what time, Lord. That's all right.
You are sons of those who murdered the prophets. You serpents, you brood of vipers. How will you escape being condemned to hell? I am the law of Moses.
Don't sign up for it. If they tell you, say you're, if it's the government, they might say we're not going to give you benefits unless you sign up for digital ID. I can't help that. I'm going to tell you, you at this point have to choose. Obviously going to engineer it so that you'll feel you can't refuse. If you sign up for it, your life is going to end. Your free life is going to end. So I would say, like I always did with the jabs before I really knew what was going on, I would say, don't decide anything now. Defer your decision a month, maybe in another month. Same with digital ID. Please, when it's first put to you, and especially if they threaten you, we'll have to fire you if you won't sign up for this. This is good for you, is it? Why would they threaten you? Why would they punish you for not doing something that's supposedly good for you? And the answer is, I mentioned earlier, always two reasons: the ostensible reason, the excuse, or the real reason. And the threats come because the real reason is what I've been telling you. It's for bad. So if they tell you they won't pay your benefits if you don't sign up for digital ID, I'm going to ask you to swallow hard and not sign up. You might have to sign up in a month or 3 months. Don't sign up. The more people who don't sign up, the more likely we are to be able to defeat this, because other people will be taking their lead from you. So if you've got children, I think you should be willing to go hungry for a bit. If I have to, I will, in order to stop this happening. So I made the bold statement, I'm not going to take on a digital ID. And some people have said, you will lose access to your money in your bank accounts. Do you know what? So be it. If I sign up for it, what's going to happen is what I've outlined to you. Money's not going to matter. One, they'll steal it. And secondly, I don't want to survive in a world in which I'm beeping my way into and out of shops and beeping my way to buy some moldy bread with insect flour, right? I'm not going to live in that world. So I'm just going to stop. And the worse the punishment threatened brought upon me, the worse the retribution, the more sure you should be that this is a bad thing. So even if they say we're going to fire you, say respectfully, I don't trust this system. I'm going to defer my decision. I'm not going to sign up this month. Let them fire you. I think they'll have to give up. Remember NHS 100K when they said, we're going to jab you all or you'll lose your job. And 100,000 of them campaigned on the street, and the government actually gave in the next week. So there's enough power if we only just take our courage in our hands. And you only need courage when you're threatened. You need some courage now. You need some courage now. I'm not frightened. I don't look frightened because I'm not frightened. Everyone's life comes to an end eventually. I don't want it earlier than necessary. But if I do what I think these evil tyrants want me to do, the end of my free life has been reached. Honestly, I think we can defeat this if enough of us are reasonably brave. You don't need to fight anybody. It would be pointless. They'd love you to get young, strong men if you get fighting on the street. I bet the government would love that. Never been my style. But the way to fight it is literally not to comply. Don't sign up for digital ID. I would say if they tell you there's another scary event and you need to go home and stay in, go out for a long walk. Go and find several friends and go for a long walk. If you believe at this point what you're being told on the mainstream media, I've lost all sympathy for you.
Fellow truth seekers, today I'd like to share a document with you. Last week I received a data dump, actually a series of documents that are the most shocking evidence of the existence of adrenochrome I've ever seen. The volume is extensive and important to share, as it shows that it is highly unlikely that all these documents are falsified or created by a LARP. For those of you that do not know what adrenochrome is, it's a substance used as a drug and life elixir. The drug is the most expensive on the market and extremely popular amongst Hollywood stars. It is derived from blood of young donors, preferably below the age of 12 years old. The blood needs to contain the highest amount of adrenaline, for which the children are terrorized, raped, and tortured to raise their adrenaline level. When the child is in an extreme state of pain and fear, the blood is harvested. This happens in the so-called adrenochrome harvesting sites on an industrial scale and within a worldwide network. It started with this letter that was sent to a German blogger. Dear Mr. Schaefer, I'm sending you the photocopies and printouts because I am afraid. I ordered USB sticks at Amazon and received them last week. One stick had an opened packaging and there was data on it, PDF texts. At first I wanted to send the stick back, but then I thought, no, let's first see what's on it. I do not understand English very well, but what I understand is that it was a list of abducted children. Those are probably caught and abused. It is terribly sad. A company called CYM runs scams and evaluates children. They offer the adrenochrome and sell it. Disposal means elimination. There are hundreds of pages and I can only print out a few. There are also lists of names and photos of adults. I think that these are the people who keep the children captive. So she sent this, these files to this blog because he was writing about Q and Trump's plan. I cannot send an email because I'm really afraid, and I think that these are terrible killers that torture the small children, just like Q also writes. I've been reading about Q for a long time. Please find the possibility to publish this on your blog or on a website. I've checked the names, etc., etc. I have a few, I've looked up a few of them, not all of them. And these companies, they seem so serious. Can you give the list to Mr. Trump, who will hopefully get them out of their misery?
We did a great job on that. The ventilators, the equipment that we got, the cupboards were all there, everything that we did. And then we developed a vaccine, 3 vaccines in 3 months, in 9 months. And actually, I'll tell you, it was 3 days less, 3 days less than 9 months. And it's great. And you know what? I believe totally in your freedoms. I do. Bree, you got to do what you have to do. But I recommend take the vaccines. I did it. It's good. Take the vaccines. But you got, no, that's okay. That's all right. You got your freedoms. But I happen to take the vaccine. If it doesn't work, you'll be the first to know, okay? I'll call up Alabama and say, hey, you know what? But it is working.
You think I didn't see you with that little girl? Eric, you should be.
Your streets.
No, they're your streets, Sheriff. They're your streets to keep faith. And where is your man?
No justice! No peace! No racism! No justice! Come on, guys.
So, if there was a, I don't know, central command, for example, one day the command is sent out, the 5G technology sends the signal all around the world in, you know, very short space of time, and all those nanobots that are collected in people's bodies come into action. 5G technology, the coronavirus, nanotechnology, this vaccine, you know, suddenly it only took them around 40 days from sequencing to producing the vaccine, which is an incredibly fast turnaround time for vaccine production. I feel that there's more to it than just, you know, good luck and smart people. Obviously these things are planned well in advance, so it's the possibility that, you know, they could have been working on this vaccine for a long time. But in my opinion, the nanotechnology, the 5G technology, and the coronavirus are all linked together.
Now, the 2 documents, I'll read them out to you. The cover page document says DTFN estimates for nano-domestic quell Phase 4 updated compliance. And this is for the Assistant Director of Advanced Projects, the Office of DARPA Command, for the Department of Secretary of Defense eyes only. Then it describes nano-domestic quell in the other document, and it says that there needs to be more inflows of dispersal in Pepsi Company, 9.9% more, Nestle, 8.5% more, and it goes on with the different percentages. Chicago Municipal, that's referring to the water supply. Atlantic Municipal, another water supply. Coca-Cola, Los Angeles Municipal, and Seattle Municipal. These are just a few of the very many areas that these things have infiltrated.
What we've been quoting is $50 per specimen. I think some people are doing more, some slightly less.
50 was like 12 years ago. would you expect for intact tissue? What sort of compensation? What sort of...
Well, why don't you start by telling me what you're used to paying? Well, you know, in negotiations, the person who throws out the figure first is at a loss, right? So I want a Lamborghini. I said I want a Lamborghini.
Okay, we kind of launched it because we were talking to Eleanor, but then Robert Stark is with Biomex. Very nice to meet you. Pasadena.
When we were in LA, we had a deal with the guys who were using
Novogenics. Yeah. The problem we're having is that in the California affiliates are all already partnered up with somebody.
Well, Pasadena's not actually.
Oh, Pasadena's not.
But you have the volume? I don't. What kind of volume do you need?
How far in gestation do you go?
16 weeks.
To 16.
We only do 20 cases a week, so it's not a big deal.
So that's the. I mean.
Hey, no, I'm not wasting.
Do you have a card on you? Because okay, let me give you one of mine. Because I did.
No.
Oh well.
By the way, I'll just fucking out him. Jim Carrey called me up last week. I talked to him for 5.5 hours. He's like begging me to like get a deal with Q. Like he's afraid of the fucking brackets. I'm like, and it's just like yammering on with the crap, but like not owning up or doing anything fucking meaningful. Meanwhile, just lying to everybody. Guys, you are fucking cowards. You're going down, you're gonna fucking die. That's it, you're gonna die. If you ate kids, you're gonna fucking die. You can't get over that shit. That's a death sentence. You cannot fucking live. But what I'll tell you that you can do is possibly save your soul. You can save your soul, and I can help you save your soul. You will fucking die though, so get over it. I know you all are afraid that you sold your soul, but I think you can get it back. You're gonna fucking die though, that's it. How did Jim Carrey get my number? Because I gave it to him. Yeah, I talked to him twice last week, one for 3.5 hours, and by the end of it I was like, oh my god, I hope I never talk to this pedantic fucker again. It was that, like, excruciating. What did Jim Carrey say? Oh, it was just him talking in fucking loops most of the time about the totality of your existence. He pulled a Betty Washam on me. He said that, like, well, because of me, I made way for you. I'm like, fuck you, dude. You did not do shit. You did not do shit.
Did the Jews kill Jesus?
He was a child of Israel. There were Jews and Romans in Israel. There were no Norwegians there. No Norwegians there. No Norwegians there. The Jewish Sanhedrin and those who they held sway over, and the Romans, were the material agents of his demise. You know, critics who have a problem with me don't really have a problem with me in this film. They have a problem with the four Gospels.
It's a letter written by Chaim Weizmann, the leader of the Zionist movement, at that time living in the United States, to Winston Churchill in September 1941, 3 months before Pearl Harbor, when Churchill is frantically trying to claw the United States into his war, because that's his only salvation. And Weizmann writes to Churchill a letter which he says, Mr. Prime Minister, unless you grant us what we want, which is the creation of a Jewish army in the Middle East, with our own arsenal and our own weapons and our own uniform and our own flag, unless you grant us what we want, then you are not going to win us over. And let me tell you what we will do if you do grant us what we want. If you grant us our wishes, then we will act on your behalf in the United States. And remember, Mr. Churchill, he writes in this letter, remember, we are the only powerful, unified bloc in the United States which solidly backs the British cause in this war. September 1941. Everybody else is basically isolationist. We are the only ethnic, unified group which solidly backs the British cause. We are the only people who are in a position to bring the United States into this war. We did it in the last war and we can do it again. And in those 2 years, 1942 and 1943, we had developed that computer to break the codes of Himmler and the SS. And in particular, we were reading every day the messages of the concentration camp commandants of the 7 biggest concentration camps, including Dachau and Buchenwald and Auschwitz. And what do these signals say that Auschwitz is sending back to Berlin every day, that we were reading without the Germans knowing it? Remember, they're sending this in their top secret code, so they're not concealing anything. They're sending it in their own secret code, and they have no reason to believe that we British have a computer, which didn't exist in those days, but we built the first ever computer in the world. It was as big as a house. And we were breaking the German codes with it. And the SS codes, the commandant of Auschwitz, a man called Rudolf Höss, was reporting back to Berlin every day what he was doing in his camp. And he was giving statistics, 4 figures every day. The numbers of prisoners who had arrived during the previous 24 hours ending at midnight. The number of prisoners, or slave laborers if you will, who had left the camp during the previous 24 hours. The numbers of prisoners who were on hand at midnight, the total in the camp at Auschwitz. And the 4th figure was losses, Abgänger, which was correctly interpreted by British intelligence as meaning the number of prisoners who had died during the previous 24 hours in Auschwitz. A minuscule figure, which was again broken down into 3 categories. The number of prisoners who had died from epidemics and illness, the numbers of prisoners who had died from shooting, and the number of prisoners who had died from hanging. Well, there are no documents. Not one single page of German wartime documents talks about gas chambers or killing people with gas. And there are people who say, but Irving, you don't expect to find any documents. The Nazis will have destroyed everything in the last weeks of the war. Well, somebody who says that is unfamiliar with the kind of chaos that exists even now in the German archives. If you go to the National Archives in Pennsylvania Avenue in Washington and see the captured German records there, they're still in disarray. The Germans in the final weeks of chaos would not have had time to meticulously go through every single file and folder and document, and even if every copy of that had been destroyed, there's always some Feldwebel, some corporal who writes a private diary, or who writes a letter home to mummy in which he describes what they did that day. And those documents have turned up now in profusion, but there's nowhere in the private diaries or private letters of the Germans during those years, not a single reference explicitly to killing people in gas chambers. There's lots of references to ugly things being done to the Jews, but the gas chambers just don't survive in the archives.
I'm a leading man. You know, I don't follow nobody. I follow the Lord. That's it. That's the only following I'm doing is my Lord and Savior Jesus Christ. I'm not following anybody else on this planet, period.
Amen to that. Well, lastly, it's the
Amen. I could say anti-Semitic things and Adidas can't drop. Now what?
Without music, life would be a mistake.